The standard Neo-Darwinian view of evolution relies on gradualism, modeling biological development as a slow, continuous accumulation of tiny micromutations unfolding over millions of years. But the fossil record presents a recurring anomaly. Entirely new, highly complex species appear suddenly, with no intermediate forms leading up to them in the rock layers below. This lack of intermediate fossils provides evidence of rapid, discontinuous leaps in speciation. Paleontologists like Stephen Jay Gould formalize this phenomenon as punctuated equilibrium, or macroevolution. Standard natural selection explains slow microadaptations, but these sudden leaps in the fossil record suggest biology is missing a physical organizing principle for speciation. Biologists traditionally attempt to explain rapid speciation through the founder principle. This assumes that a small, geographically isolated population will mutate and adapt much faster due to extreme selective pressure. This probability distribution reveals a mathematical flaw. Most genetic drift consists of neutral mutations with no immediate selective advantage. Since intermediate mutations toward complex traits are often detrimental, natural selection acts as a harsh filter, actively deleting these steps and flatlining the probability of macrospeciation. This leaves us with a paradox. How does an entire group of unexpressed traits survive individual selection long enough to define a new species? Solving this requires a mechanism that allows beneficial mutations to be held in limbo without being immediately destroyed by natural selection. At the microscopic level, continuous movement is an illusion, governed instead by the rules of quantum physics. We see this in the quantum leap, where a particle moves from one state to another instantaneously. It blinks out of existence and reappears. The physicist Niels Bohr was the first to formalize this discontinuous atomic movement. Quantum mechanics also introduces nonlocality, the ability of separated objects to instantaneously correlate their changes without a local exchange of information. This non-local correlation was famously mathematically outlined and debated by Albert Einstein and his contemporaries. Non-locality provides a potential solution for synchronization problems in biology, like the simultaneous coordination of cells in morphogenesis, to the shared timing of coevolution between species. These two quantum behaviors, discontinuous leaps and instantaneous non-local correlation, provide the exact physical framework needed to explain the sudden, coordinated leaps of macroevolution. In the quantum world, objects exist as uncollapsed waves of probability, or superpositions, until they are observed. John von Neumann identified a paradox in using a physical instrument to measure these events, a problem known as the von Neumann chain. For example, consider a physical measuring device, like a Geiger counter tracking radioactive decay. Because the Geiger counter is made of matter governed by quantum probabilities, it fails to force a single reality. It simply becomes part of the superposition it is trying to measure. A purely material chain of measurement can never resolve itself into a single reality. The wave function continues expanding indefinitely. Breaking this infinite chain requires a non-material organizing principle, consciousness, that sits outside the quantum system to trigger the collapse into actuality. These same quantum rules apply to the genetic code inside a living cell. Point mutations and chromosomal reshuffling are fundamentally micro-quantum events. A neutral mutation splits the gene's state into overlapping possibilities of both the old and new genetic configurations. As the cell divides, these uncollapsed superpositions are passed down through heredity to subsequent generations. Because these mutations exist only as uncollapsed possibilities rather than manifest traits, they remain invisible to natural selection. The living cell acts as a massive probability storage drive, accumulating a hidden library of potential genetic configurations over millions of years without triggering a physical change. This raises a critical question. When does this accumulation of genetic superposition finally collapse into a physical trait? This is a tangled hierarchy where system and observer intertwine, like the liar's paradox in an endless loop. In a cell, the nucleus is the quantum system, locked in an oscillating feedback loop with the cytoplasm, acting as the measuring apparatus. The system triggers an event only when the genetic changes are significant enough to warrant macroscopic expression. This is downward causation, where consciousness makes a self-referential choice from the available possibilities. This conscious choice instantaneously collapses the web of genetic probabilities into a fully formed biological reality, completing the discontinuous quantum speciation leap. Evolution demonstrates a clear directionality, moving from simple, single-celled organisms toward highly complex beings. Standard chaos theory and random mutations lack an arrow of time. In random systems, changes equally degrade or enhance complexity. The quantum model explains this upward trajectory. Consciousness opportunistically selects the collapse from available superpositions, driving a one-way evolution toward greater complexity. This mechanism represents a creative, real-time optimization rather than a predetermined final cause. Evolution is driven by a non-local consciousness continuously choosing the most complex possibilities available in the present moment. Measuring quantum coherence in a living cell is extremely difficult, as probing the mechanics often destroys the organism's life. However, directed mutation provides observable evidence. When starved, certain bacteria seemingly choose genetic shifts to consume new food sources and survive. Supporting data also comes from the non-local coherence of biophoton emissions observed across physically separated cells. This new biological paradigm defines Darwinian natural selection as the enforcer of environmental homeostasis. Conversely, the idealist quantum mechanics model serves as the engine for discontinuous creative speciation leaps. Life is a macroscopic quantum system where consciousness continually collapses infinite possibility into the singular, evolving reality of the biological world.